Good afternoon, everyone. This is Jill Breit. I'm the Executive Director of TAUNY, and I'm coming to you today from the TAUNY Center in downtown Canton. We're very pleased this afternoon to be screening Yancey's Sugarbush, first crop of the year, which is a documentary we produced in 2021. It was selected as a feature in the 2022 Snowtown Film Festival, and Xiuke Wei, the director of this video, received a North Country Filmmakers Award for her work on the project. So today we're going to share the video with you, and then after the video concludes, we're going to spend some time with Jane and Haskell Yancey right here at the TAUNY Center, coming live to you, and we'll talk about what's been going on at their property, at their Sugarbush, since we spoke to them last year, and we'll find out how their season's going. So sit back, relax, enjoy, and we'll talk to you in about half an hour. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Xiuke Wei. I was the director of Yancey's Sugarbush first crop of the year. With my colleague Jill Breit and Kamala Amiradi, together we made this short documentary. Yancey's Sugarbush was a learning process for me. Before we filmed it, I didn't know what Sugarbush meant. But now I can tell basically everybody I know how to make maple syrup because I was involved in every step of it. Yancey's Sugarbush is part of a Traditions of the Season series TAUNY was doing during the year fall 2020 to beginning of 2021. So spring 2021, we filmed it. In summer 2021, we sent it out to Snowtown Film Festival, and when I learned the news I won North Country Filmmaker Award, I felt especially proud. That was the place I lived for 3 years since I moved to US, and I felt I have a deep connection with the North Country. I hope you can see that from the film. Yancey's Sugarbush is something I will cherish for my entire life, probably. Every time I look back on that film, I remember that day. I remember the cornbread and chili that Jane fed me. I remember how it feels to live in the North, and the first time tasting the maple syrup right out of the filter. Everything was so amazing. I hope you will enjoy this film. I hope you share with the people who might be interested in. I think it's very cool to watch through how maple syrup are made and the comparison of the traditional way and the modern way to collecting sap. If you think the film was fun, visit Yancey's Sugarbush in the next sugaring season. Thank you. Hope you enjoy it.
We're Haskell and Jane Yancey. The two of us and our son Tim own and operate the Yancey Sugarbush, which has been in the family since 1844. Same woods has been tapped all these years, except possibly 1 year in the Civil War. It's been in the family. I'm the 4th generation, and Tim would be the 5th generation. Been a very traditional operation through the years, utilizing horses and buckets. Buckets are kind of on the way out in terms of the industry. So we do have some on tubing and whatnot too. In fact, the majority of the taps are now on tubing. We still utilize horses and buckets as much as we can. I guess we do it because we like to do it, but we do have to make a living is what I tell people. It's one of those things you look forward to. It's kind of the first crop of the year. Something that you look forward to, but you're kind of glad when the season's done too. It's hard on everybody, but that's part of the challenge, I guess. Now usually when we tap buckets, we have two people tapping, and one bores the tap hole and the other one pounds the spout in and hangs the bucket. But this is a one-person operation, I guess, right now. That's all. I'm going to walk over to the tree. Then I've got to find a good place to tap it. You can tap beside them within a couple inches, but you don't want to be above or below. And I think I've got a good spot here. And I got nice white wood, so it's a good tap. And now you pound the spout in snug, but not like a nail. See there, the sound changed just a little bit, so that means it's tight enough and it's warm enough and whatnot, and it's a good enough tap that it's starting to drip already. And that is a reasonably good drip right there in terms of amount and speed. And those of us that have buckets love that sound, the drops hitting the bottom of the bucket. In the 50s and 60s, you'd have to have a hard freeze the night before for it to run. And when you're talking maybe 40, then if you get down to like 25 would be kind of more an ideal temperature spread. They have not run that well yet this year. In fact, it's been kind of a frustrating year. What we tap is mostly hard. They're called hard or sugar maple. They are the sweeter of the two maples that are generally tapped. Soft maples, we have some, not as many. We do not put as many taps in a tree as a lot of people. Our woods has been tapped a long time. The trees have been selected for ever since day one, really. One of my ancestors, if you cut a maple of any size, would chase you down the road, I think. And that's the way it's been managed for maples. We don't have a 100% clear maple operation by any woods by any means. We have a lot of other hardwoods and some hemlock and that sort of thing. Foresters and people are saying now it's better not to have a one species woods anyway, and ours is not. Takes 40 to 50 years to grow a tree big enough to tap. We tell the guys that it's got to be at least as big as the bucket or it doesn't get tapped. We have planted some trees. We got involved with Cooperative Extension, had a sweet tree program. We planted a number of them. Most of them have not done too well. But for the most part, it's natural regeneration, not planted. The sap that comes out of the tree, it can vary in sweetness from anything, in our case, from 1 to 3. 3 would be very sweet. 1 is we're not too happy with. We probably run close to 2%. Syrup is essentially 66% sugar, so it takes a lot of evaporation to make syrup in the boiling operation, which after the sap is collected, either from tubing tanks or from buckets by people carrying 5-gallon pails, and in our case dumping in a gathering tank on a wagon most of the time, pulled by horses. most of the time.
That she gonna ride on the wagon. You're gonna ride with us? Okay, we're ready to go. It's a little bit of a rough ride. Start like here. Okay. Woo. We used to come here and bring our kids here. Then our kids come here, and then my daughter said Haskell needed help one year, so I helped him out a little bit. I like the horses, working with the horses. Got that? Got room?
Yeah, I got
I'll go on to these others. Hey girls, get up. That's an empty one. That's half the drive. Not bad. It's going to be a little rough here because of the full load on it. It pulls harder, and they like to when it's pulling heavy. They like to pull fast. They're doing pretty good today on this load. Last load they were racing out of here. Whoa, girl, whoa. Let them catch their breath a little before we hit the hill. chain again. There we go.
A good team of horses that is well behaved and will respond to voice commands. Two people can drive gather and just as easily as three can gather with a tractor. And
you just like horses.
and I guess we just like horses. It would be hard to give them up. Gathering is a young person's job. And so I don't do that. I'm involved in the other aspects too. But during production, I'm pretty much boiling and boiling shed. Back and forth here, and as it goes, it keeps getting sweeter. You're evaporating water out, and it's boiling at a higher temperature, so that once you're operating, it doesn't. If you keep it fired, it doesn't really mix. This is always sweeter. Well, once in a while things mess up. This is sweeter than that. That's sweeter than that. That's sweeter than that. And there's an opening in the opposite end of each partition, so it's going through like a maze.
That's where I want this to float, right about where the red line is. I'm not sure. And I always check it in the barrel too. Alright, what I'm going to do now is open this valve, and it's going to let sap in, and it's going to push the syrup out here. So I got to watch to make sure that you see the different flow. As soon as it starts flowing fast, that's sap and not syrup. Like right about now. Take this over to the filter. Once it gets filtered, then it gets bottled and we got syrup to sell.
My gloves end up all sugar before the end of season. get so much this time. There, it's just right. So I stopped just at the right time. Yep, just going to be a half a pail. See, that'll make a nice background. A newspaper photographer one time that took my picture, I don't know how many times, pouring into that with it, using that as a mirror. I think he was taking the picture in the mirror. There we go. Put it in on top and it's coming out the bottom. Okay, this I'm going to put tool. Oh. The other maple products, Jane takes care of those, and I know very little about it except I watch her do it. And our son Tim, this year he spent most of his role, well, he did a lot of preparation of the tubing lines and whatnot, and he's also done a lot of picking up the tubing sap this year just because of the way our help situation has fallen. He will gather and whatnot too.
Okay, so basically, the little building we went by that was so noisy, there's a vacuum pump in there. And it is putting out vacuum onto this line right here that comes down into this. This is, it draws vacuum into these lines that are bringing the sap into the releaser here. And it fills one canister or the other until it reaches a certain point, and then it knocks that lever, and then out it comes. And then it's filling the other canister while that one is releasing and draining out, if that makes sense. So now basically all we're going to do is just take what's in the tanks here and pump it into our tank on the trailer and take it back. So that's the general idea, if everything works. That's always the other question. But, let's get that there. It's a way of getting more sap faster, but it's a lot noisier, less peaceful, I suppose, but it also gets the job done. So that prime this pump. I am filling this up so I can prime the pump so that we can just stick it in there and draw all the sap out. adequate. I'll set that there. Get this to the far one. And start up our pump. Choke.
Our two daughters end up canning syrup a lot. Jane ends up canning syrup a lot. Our son-in-law has learned how to boil, and he kind of enjoys it, so on weekends he boils some to take some of the pressure off the rest of us, because when the sap runs, we're very busy.
Everybody gets very tired and occasionally quite grouchy.
She's not referring to me.
Oh.
The Sugarbush, we're saying, is 170, 180 acres. The part we own, some of our tubing is on some of my cousin's land, which is not included in the 170, 180 acres. We have 3,300 or 2,700 taps on a vacuum system, this is the third year we've had it, and we're still in the learning process on that. So we have 600 other taps on tubing that is not on vacuum, it's on natural flow. And then I'm saying we got about 1,000, 1,200 buckets out this year. Back when we tapped 6,500 trees, that's when it was about the 170, 180 acres. What we're doing some now with the buckets is we're rotating them around on some of the flatter land and not tapping the same trees every year, just because we're not tapping all the trees anyway, so we don't have to tap all of them every year, or certain ones every year, except these right around the boiling shed. These get tapped every year. For quite a while I told everybody in the family, I'm not going to tap one year and I'm going to take the year off and I'm going to just go visit everybody else. And they just laughed at me. So we wouldn't be able to not do it, I guess. Quite a few years ago now, she had her knee operated on, and I was in fairly bad shape too. And this was like January, and what we were saying is not that we weren't going to do it. What we said is we weren't looking forward to it. It's golden with delicate taste, and that's all part of the trade name. And then amber is the second one with a rich taste, and then dark with a robust taste, and very dark with a strong taste. And for it to be any one of these grades, it has to be that color or lighter. And if it's lighter than the next grade, then it's the next grade. But because you get sometimes something that's very close to a lighter grade, but not quite, kind of thing. The grades are an attempt by the maple industry to get consistent grades throughout all of the states that produce maple syrup and also Canada. So they had to pick names that would translate well into French for the Quebec people. Okay, so they had trouble picking names that would work. But that's basically the color scheme now. The poster may be faded a little bit, so that would not, but we have actual grading kits where you take a sample of the syrup, put it next to the appropriate grade color, and determine whether it makes it or doesn't make it.
How you use this is you would put a sample of the syrup in this container, place this down inside the vat, and you look through this light and compare it to the colors that are on the lens inside that are the different grades. Right now it happens to be on amber, so up to golden or down to dark. If it's darker than the dark one, then it is a very dark.
The lighter color you tend to make earlier in the season, and as the season progresses, it tends to get darker. Now that's the generalization. Sometimes it will get lighter during the season, but the tendency is lighter to darker. Old-time maple people want it as light as they can get it, and people that aren't as familiar with whatnot tend to like these have more flavor. A stronger maple flavor would be the tendency from golden to very dark. And very delicate flavor, that's the one that you would like for sugar cakes and maple cream and some of those type products. We have a lot of customers from year to year, and we've gotten to know a lot of them by name, some but just by face. We've been included in one of them who has passed away now, his birthday party, and down near Syracuse, you know, this kind of thing. And it's we see a lot of the same people every year. Some people come from a long ways away, some are close by.
Truthfully, last year, there are certain people that we didn't get to see because of the COVID situation. They decided, and I mean, we didn't overly encourage people to come last year. It was just when everything was breaking out and you didn't know what was what very much at all. And, you know, even though a few of them I've been in contact either on the phone or on Facebook or on something, and it just seemed wrong not to see them. And I think we would really miss that aspect of things as much as anything. To people, to the place, to our community, to a larger community that's more than just local, of people that maybe just, I guess, of people that seem to think we make a good product that they enjoy, and that is something that we can take a little bit of pride in. That people seem to want to come back and get our syrup year after year after year.
TAUNY is a community project made possible by the participation of many. We look forward to having you join us. Tell us how to position ourselves, and we'll just have a brief live chat.
Yep. So, all right, I'll just use one of these. We have extra chairs. If I can get you guys centered here, a little bit better. Jane and Haskell, if you can hop over. One, I'm sorry to move you again.
And I'll just sit right here.
Jill, do you want to kick off?
Yeah, I'll kick off.
Questions and intro? Okay.
Yeah, and then I'll just have a little chat with.
All right.
And of course, anybody can ask questions from the audience. Just let me know. Do your countdown.
All right. And in 3, 2, 1.
Hi, welcome back everyone to our screening room here in the TAUNY Center in downtown Canton, New York. We hope you enjoyed that video. We're very pleased that Jane and Haskell Yancey are here today with us at the TAUNY Center, and we're going to be able to talk to them for just a few minutes about what's been going on since we saw them last year. So welcome, Jane and Haskell.
Thank you.
I understand that Sugarbush is on pause today. It just so happens.
We lucked out as far as coming here today because we're not boiling at all. The last sap got boiled in Thursday morning. We're hoping, really hoping that it's cold enough this weekend that we'll get some more sap.
So the video we just watched was filmed almost exactly a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
Watching it again today, did it bring up any particular memories or things that you thought maybe you wished you'd said, or?
I'm sure there's a lot of things I wish I would have said and some things I wished I wouldn't have said. But yeah, it brought back the season some, and last year overall wasn't a particularly good season for a lot of people. Ours, our area was a little better than some, so it worked out. It probably was a good thing for the overall market, and I'm talking Canada, Vermont, all the other areas that produced. A lot of the surplus syrup that had been carrying over for several years got used through the winter and whatnot, and the demand stayed strong. So in the overall market, it improved the market situation that way. So
In terms of pricing?
but we hope so. We haven't heard it much. Everybody, I think, for the most part, raised their retail prices. But we haven't heard much yet about the wholesale bulk price, the drum price is the way we refer to it. And in fact, it's been very, very quiet. Usually by now we hear something and you have some indication of, usually at the end the sap isn't very sweet. And there's a decision you make sometimes, is it worth boiling it or not? And part of that is the price of the lower grades. By lower grades, I mean the darker grades. Not everybody would argue that's a lower grade, but.
Right, yeah, in fact, you mentioned in the video that some people like the early, very light syrup,
Right.
and some people really prefer the end of the season
Right,
syrup.
the light syrup, the flavor is less pronounced. It's a more delicate flavor, and a lot of people that have been in the maple industry, that's what they like. And if you're going to use it to make other products, that's usually the best. But the darker grades have more flavor, and we're finding our customers are shifting a little more towards the darker grades over the years as well.
Interesting, so tastes are changing.
A little bit.
Some, yes.
Yeah, that's great. So looking at the crew that you had working in 2021, is that the same group that's been working with you this year?
Everybody but one. The young guy there, Canton, his family situation changed, and in fact we aren't exactly sure if he's even in the area anymore. So, and then we have a different individual who was working for us that used to make syrup himself and has given it up. I'm not entirely sure why, but he came mostly because of the horses, and he's there. Terry, the boiler, is still with us, and he started out as a visitor. Ian is still with us, and he started out as a visitor.
Now Terry, he started out as a visitor how long ago?
Oh boy,
He's been with you a long time?
a long time. More than 10, I think.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
Way
I
more.
don't know if it'd be 15 or not.
Uh-huh.
In fact, on a sadder note, somebody that's not in the film, Thursday we hurried up and boiled all the sap in so we could go to his celebration of life.
No.
And he was 90 something.
Uh-huh.
And he came, brought his horses, and he was with us for quite a while. And he's the one that I always joke about, that always said at the end of each year, boy, I don't know if I'll be back. You know, this knee isn't very good. And the next year, boy, I don't know if I'll be back or not. This knee isn't very good. I think the knee's changed. I'm not positive. But anyway, he had bought his team. At that time, we had 2 teams, and he had 2 sets of harnesses. One of the sets of harnesses stayed at our place. So I kind of didn't get too nervous about him not coming back until I absolutely couldn't.
You had the collateral, yes.
He still came back every year to see how we were doing and check on us and tell us what we ought to do.
Yeah.
And it's May and June was
Yes.
the name of the horses last year. Are they both with you again this year?
They're both here this year.
Yes, and May has gotten a year older, I guess we put it that way, and she did okay pulling the sack tank. But 2 weekends when they gave horse rides, she got very, very tired. And he has a younger horse to replace her, who wasn't broke quite well enough to use this year, and he thought he might substitute some. But anyhow, he's kind of saying, Rick, the driver, is saying that probably she won't be back.
Okay, all right.
I'm sure she'll be a pet like our horse was.
Yeah, that's nice. Well, let's talk about this year, 2022 season. What's been going on at the Sugarbush this year, and what is your season looking like this year?
It started at about the same time. We boiled 13 days in a row, which is pretty good. We did not get a huge, overwhelming run at once, which we have not had, seems like for a few years. But we had a good steady sat flow there, and then it paused for a while, and then we boiled 7 days in a row. And now it's stopped. Well, Thursday we finished boiling in the sap we had. And we're hoping for more. We're over 2/3. We're not to 3/4 of what we call a crop, and it's not quite what last year's was. Now, if we get another reasonable run out of this weather, then we'll be along. The color has been lighter in general this season than last season.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm actually surprised that the production seems not even quite as good as last year, because it has seemed to me, as somebody just casually paying attention to weather, that we have had really cold nights and that maybe it would get warm enough during the day. But what has the factor been? Have the days not been quite warm enough?
Well, yeah, we went once again, and this seems to be happening more recently than in my memory. You get down to maybe not 0, but 0 to 5 overnight, which is really pretty cold and freezes up very hard. And then you go to 50 or 60, which is really too warm to sustain the run. So you get a good run there, but it isn't sustained like if you had 25 and 40, 45 for a week in a row or something like that.
So Jane, in terms of the things that you do as part of the whole sugar production, you brought some sugar today. So for those of you who are not here in the studio with us, we're sorry, but we're gonna happily eat that sugar when this is over. How has that been for you in terms of making?
Once I had syrup. Some years we have kind of retained some nice syrup from the year before. Last year that ended up not happening. So I would get a little jump on making things ahead of time. This year I had to wait until we had syrup made this year to start baking any of the product. So it's been a bit of a try and catch up, and that kind of finally happened this week until somebody came this morning and almost cleaned me out of one of the things. So we will probably be going home and making some more. But so it's been going. We've been making the sugar cakes, the maple cream, and the granulated maple sugar, and that's my tough one at times. It's not hard in some ways, but when it goes wrong very wrong very quickly.
There's not a lot of room for error, right?
No, there's
You have to
not.
get it just right.
You have to get it just right, but pretty much just right. You want to evaporate enough of the water out so that you don't have to, so that it granulates, and all of it granulates, and you don't have a sticky mess still in with your sugar. But on the other hand, if you take it too far, it burns.
And that happens fast.
And
right?
it can happen very, very fast.
Yeah. Now, have you found that people are starting to come visit you in person again? We talked last year about the fact that because of the pandemic, people were not visiting.
Yes, we had two very busy, the Maple Weekends were once again reinstated that the state association sponsors and work and whatnot, and we had very good turnout on the second one especially, but on both of them. And looking at how much syrup has gone, we've moved already. It's been very good. We have bottled and canned more syrup this year than we did last year, the last couple of years, and a lot of it has already been sold. So,
Well, that's nice.
we don't know if on Maple Weekends are so hectic that you don't know necessarily who has been there and who hasn't. You don't get to see everybody, so we don't know if some of our regulars are still to come or have already been there. But and as I say, the bulk market looks very good, and we're all anticipating a better price on that.
Well, good, that's great. So are there any questions from the audience today? Anything? Yes?
So I'm curious, how old are your oldest trees? Do any of them go back to when your ancestors? They do, but how far?
We grumble about some left out in the fields. We call them Peter's trees, and he was the original starter of the Sugarbush. And we feel that they're ones he left out in the fields when they cleared the fields for the Sugarbush. And at the time it made sense, you tap them, you get syrup, you have a shade to rest the horses in kind of thing. Now they're a pain in the neck with today's modern equipment. You gotta go around them, they drop limbs, you put a limb through a piece of equipment, so yes, we have what we feel are some of the original trees. And we even have a tap mark that they found in a block of wood when they split. It would happen to be stove wood because it was about that high. Where they had, back in the old days, they did a V, chopped a V in a tree and then stuck something in so it would drip out and into something. They found one of those and they counted the rings back and it was 1868. So yes, we have a lot, our maple trees generally don't get cut unless there's a reason.
Do they go past prime as far as any?
Yeah, when they start to die, and truthfully, we probably let them go too long, and then they just end up as wood. If we cut them a little sooner, we get some lots, but we could get more lots.
In the video, I think it said you at one point had 6,500 taps.
We had 6,500 buckets out at one time. That was in my early years, and that was my uncle's. And
our first few years.
Our first few years, yeah.
Few years.
We had two gathering crews, two teams, generally, and it took more than 2 days to cover the woods, in a sense. They'd get one over the main woods in like a day and a half, day and 3/4, but then there was a separate section of woods farther a little ways from the main woods, plus had a big hill to come up to the boiling shed. And you didn't go over there until you could go over there and finish it, which was probably the next morning. And then they set up a system where you could run the tractor or the horse tank into a tractor tank, and the tractor came up while they each team gathered another tank. The only sap that the horses brought all that distance then was whatever was at the end, the partial tanks usually.
And what is an average number of gallons you'd like to see in a year, and what was a banner year?
Probably the biggest one I know of was 1,400, but ours, we talk about 800 being the average crop now, and we aren't tapping all the trees. In fact, last year I said, 1,000, 1,200? I forgot what I did say. This year we tapped about 600 buckets. We knew our help situation wasn't going to be very good. It's hard to get people to work in the Sugarbush when there's so many other jobs available, and I mean, even at McDonald's you can go to work for $15 an hour, and a high school kid can do that. So. And most of our help through the years has been people that wanted to do it. to some extent, or at least part of the help was. And some of that has disappeared through the years.
Thank you.
You have another question over there?
Haskell and Jane, first of all, it's great to see you.
Yeah, nice to see you as well.
And second, what you were discussing toward the end of a few minutes ago was about the bulk market. How big a percentage of your annual production goes to retail and how the rest of it goes to bulk, right?
I was gonna say,
About half.
I was gonna say usually about half. It fluctuates a little bit, but usually about half we sell out of the place. We do a little bit of wholesaling as well with one store.
And we had a restaurant too that
Has since
closed because of COVID and then didn't reopen. But,
So have you always sold in barrels or to the bulk market? All three of the families done that?
yeah, and always at the end of the season, there's stuff that's pretty dark and strong.
Yeah.
And usually that has always gone. Now, we had a bakery that used to want the very last we made because it was so strong, and then he could use it in his baking, get a maple flavor without using much, is what it amounted to. In fact, if I mentioned the name, you'd probably even know who it was. But the bakery has since closed. It was sold and then it eventually closed. But anyway, so yeah, there's always been some, and we always want to meet our own needs first, and then after that, whatever gets made can go. In fact, we sold a drum this morning to an individual producer from downstate, that small producer who, for family reasons, didn't tap this year.
So I'm curious about the, again, the drums that you're talking about. Where do they go?
Most of them go not to Vermont like we used to always say, but just across the border in New Hampshire, the major buyer, and you may see his name on stuff in stores, Bascom. And he has the main buyer in Vermont, or the one big one that our area used to sell to, went out of business.
And which one was that?
Combs, Bob Combs Maple. And he went out of business, and Bascom in New Hampshire took over his business, I guess I would say, and was growing before that. And he is probably the premier buyer in New York State now. And in fact, if I can, I don't want to get anybody in trouble now, but it has, and I heard him say this himself, that the figures for New York's production are way off because he bought more syrup out of New York than what New York supposedly produced, and he didn't buy all of it.
Okay.
Right.
But there's the old story that the New York syrup went to Vermont and then was sold as Vermont syrup.
Right. And I think the law is still in effect. There's a big difference between produced in Vermont and bottled in Vermont.
Right. Any other questions from the audience today?
Well, I don't have any questions, but if I could just say, you filled in so many gaps for me in my understanding. We've been able to see locally how the syrup is produced, but to go from watching you tap to the lines and every step of the way, thanks so much for sharing your story in this way. And the filmmaker obviously did a really nice job too.
She did a fabulous job.
But I feel like I've lived here a long time, I should know, and you taught me so many new things today, so thank you for that.
Well, we try. We get a lot of people. We had a young couple, I think it was Wednesday, just came into the boiling shed. They were from Austria. And I'm not sure how they found us. I think somebody had sent them to us because we might still be boiling, and they were basically touring the country. And I don't know if they were on a honeymoon or what. They could have been. They were young and together. So, I mean, we think nothing of it. We enjoy having people. I guess there are times when we are ready to be by ourselves too.
But it's definitely a treat to get to visit your place. It feels wonderful. It's just a really nice environment to be in.
I do thought one question. Do you get, because of the sudden and very large growth of Fort Drum, do you get a lot of visitors, military families? Or?
We get a few. Usually there's a few, but in all truth, not a huge number. For one thing, at this point, for Maple Weekends, back earlier in the Maple Weekend progression of things, we would get a few more. But now, there are a couple of producers that are much closer to Fort Drum, so if they're looking for the experience, they tend to go to the ones that are closer. We are a bit of a trip to get to us, and we know that. From almost anywhere.
Which is part of the charm when you finally get there. So is there anything else you'd like to say today while we're talking?
Oh, I don't know.
It's been great to, as Carrie said, it's been great to fill in some of the gaps.
Well, I should say I never get grumpy.
Okay, it's on the record.
I tell people we're always grumpy during sugaring because if we don't have sap, we're grumpy because we want it and we haven't got it. If we've got it, we're grumpy because we're just wore out.
Yeah, that's just how it goes. I think we have another question here.
For our online viewers and in the future, how can they buy your product? Where can they visit your storefront?
Okay,
just the details of your business.
I guess we have to start at Croghan. If you can find your way to Croghan, and that's the home of Croghan Bologna, so that might help. Off of Route 812, as you go north, you take County Route 10, which is the Belfort Road, and it's 5 miles to Belfort? Four. Anyhow, at Belfort, you will get to a T in the road, and the Belfort Inn is straight ahead of you. You take a right onto the Long Pond Road, and then we're about 2 miles from there at the intersection of the Fish Creek Road and the Long Pond Road. It's where the boiling shed is. Our house and farm is just before you get there. And in the off season, well, even in the regular season, you can come to the house and get product. We're not at the boiling shed in the off season. And don't necessarily trust your GPS. Sometimes it takes you farther up the Long Pond Road. Not always. There's a couple other ways you can come, but that's the general directions we give. And it's 7981 Long Pond Road is our address. And I guess you're welcome to come anytime.
Our phone number is 315-346-6356. If you want to call and get immediate directions, don't trust your cell phone too close to us because
we're on the edge of cell service too.
Otherwise, just ask anybody because they're going to know who you are.
That's right, everybody knows the way.
Most people, if you get around Croghan, most people can get you to our place.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Okay, well, thank you very much. And I want everyone to know that we have another film screening coming up on June 4th. We're going to be screening a documentary about decoy carver Bob Jones that was produced by director Emma French in collaboration with Adirondack Explorer. We'll be screening the film on the 4th and having a discussion with Bob, who will be here that day. We'll also have an exhibit of Bob's decoys that will be opening that day here at the TAUNY Center. So please put that on your calendar, and we look forward to seeing you then. Thank you for joining us today.